Instead of the theme, the Great Resignation, what if we made 2022 the year of play? That's my challenge for you today. Welcome to episode 51. Episode 51, I can't believe it. It's the final episode of our calendar year, 2021. And boy, what a great lineup we have today. Before I talk to you more about how you're going to learn today how to re-engage your teams in 2022 through a new playbook, let me bring a few announcements to the front. If you love podcasts, please leave us a review using this particular link, tinyurl.com/Lisa Norell, and listen where you access your favorite podcasts. The other mention I want to bring up is that this is a time a lot of marketing leaders are preparing for a successful year ahead, and they're feeling a little isolated. Omicron has not helped. So if you're looking for a way to escape from isolation, if you feel like in terms of strategy and program development, you're breathing your own exhaust, consider applying to the Marketing Growth Leaders. This is a private community of chief marketing officers and marketing VPs who are ready to share ideas, get new resources, and contribute more to the growth conversation in their respective companies. We'd love to have you apply at marketinggrowthleaders.com. Now on to our theme for today. The past 5 years, let's face it, it's been a little heavy. People have felt burnt out, and unfortunately, many of your team members have turned not to meditation and healthy self-care, but to self-medication. We've seen team engagement hit all-time lows, and for many, our creative candles have burned out. So instead of the theme, the Great Resignation, what if we made 2022 the year of play? That's my challenge for you today. And we're going to explore the connection between play and performance. So before we all move together into the playground with Gary Ware today, I want to offer some context. And I was inspired from Dr. Bessel Van Der Kolk, who is the author of a best-selling book, The Body Keeps the Score. Dr. Van Der Kolk believes that in Western culture, we have become overly dependent on pharmacological solutions to address trauma and mental illness in our society, much triggered by the pandemic and social strife. Now, I'm not getting all maudlin on you guys here, but just bear with me and try this on for size. He calls our overdependence on pharmacological solutions the brain disease model. He says, quote, the model overlooks 4 fundamental truths. Number 1, restoring relationships and community is central to restoring our well-being. Number 2, language gives us the power to find a common sense of meaning. Number 3, we have the ability to regulate our own physiology through things such as breathing, movement, play, and touching. And number 4, I love this one, we can change social conditions and create environments where people feel safe and where we can thrive. And as I planned our programming for the last show of the calendar year, I said, let's try some playtime together because play does touch on all 4 of those areas. So let's welcome my play partner for the Mindful Marketer live stream, Mr. Gary Ware from San Diego, California. Hi, Gary.
How's it going, Lisa? So happy to be here.
Well, we had you speak to our marketing growth leaders a while back when everyone was still trying to figure out, how do you use Zoom? How do you set up your camera? And here we are almost 2 years later. I think this part of this is going to just become part of the fabric of our society.
I agree. I agree. You know, the last, was it 20 plus months, there's been a lot of disruption. And I like to say there's been some really great innovation, a chance for us to look at some models or ways of being that didn't exactly suit us, but we did it just because and adapt one. So yeah.
We really did. And did you ever think, 10 years ago, that you started to really fall in love with comedy and improv, that you'd be here in the middle of a pandemic using it to bring corporate teams together to help them heal, to help them find their creativity again?
Had had no idea. However, in looking back, yeah, it makes sense because if you think about emotions, emotions are contagious. And when we are playing, and I know we're going to dive into this, but I just want to put this point out. When we are playing, we're in this state of flow. We're in this state of creativity. We're in this state of simulation, if you will. And it is such a fertile, fertile ground for so many things. So yeah, it makes sense. But again, if the self 10 years ago were to see where I am at now, they would think, oh my gosh, what?
No, exactly. By the way, speaking of creativity, no one would ever call Lisa Norell a crafty person. I'm not one of those people that has an arts and crafts room in my house. Okay. I will say though that I did put some work on my Christmas tree back here for you. All right. Do I get a little applause for the Christmas
Yes, you
tree?
do.
All right.
I will.
Thank you. Thank you. That I wanted to be prepared for today. So the first thing I did is I said, I got to do a Christmas tree. And I came up with the tree, and then I found the lights, and I wanted a little love for that today.
Well
So,
done.
all right.
Love it. Love it. Thank you
Yes,
for embracing some play and diving into it.
that's right. That's right. And I dedicated a whole section of my book, The Mindful Marketer, to talk about play and improv. I talk about the co-founders of a marketing communications company in New York City called Peppercom. And I remember interviewing the co-founders, and they've actually made play and improv part of their ethos. They bring people together, and it's pretty much mandatory that each employee learn improv. What's taking so many companies so long to do the same thing?
I think the big thing is, let's start with the play part first, and then we'll jump into the improv. They're
I
very
would
similar.
love
There's
that. I would love
Yeah,
that because you kind of created an acronym that you were teaching me
I
about. So
did.
why don't we dive into that?
Yes, and so most people, when you think of play, they they think of, oh, it's childish, it's what kids do. They think of one modality of play, of maybe mischief, and they like, we're serious. We gotta jump into the work. So that's the first thing. When they don't realize that play is so beneficial. Fun fact: researcher Karin Previs did study on how we learn things, and she found to create a new synapse in the brain, a new neural pathway, it takes about 400 to 420 repetitions before it sticks. However, you add play and you can shortcut that to 20. I will repeat myself. You can shortcut it
Please
to
do.
20. Reason is that when you are playing, you are engaging all of your senses. It is a very pleasurable experience. You are releasing all the neural chemicals: dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins. They are the happy chemicals, if you will, that will help you do things faster. Now, imagine if you can add that to your work environment. How much more of a pleasant place it would be, for your employees. How your employees can adapt faster, especially to uncertainty, be more creative, more innovative. And so that is what I'm bringing. And of course, most people, they like, well, we have a pinball machine. I'm like, well, all right, that's nice, but that is not necessarily, the only form of play. And on top of that, yeah, you have a pinball machine, but you don't have an environment where people feel like they can play the pinball machine.
Yeah, get back to work. We're watching you.
We're
We're
watching you.
installing software on your computers to track your keystrokes, your eyeballs, and the amount of time you're spending on which websites. I mean, how can you instill play when there's monitoring going on?
Agreed. So we are neotenous creatures, which essentially, in simplest terms, means that we retain our juvenile features into adulthood. And so play is essential to our own well-being, our own growth, the ability to gather and, come together as a community. And when we are stressed, we cannot play. Like when you're stressed, you activate the sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight, flight, or freeze. And you are not being creative. You are thinking about your well-being. You are thinking about, I can't get fired. And as a result, one, you're not going to do your best work. Two, you're not going to think outside the box. You're going to do exactly what you were programmed to do, the bare minimum, and if that, and then you're probably going to burn yourself out. Now, to activate the play drive, you mentioned a framework, and it's just a simple acronym that if you can have these elements, and we can talk about how to do that in just a moment, but if you can have these elements in your environment, regardless if you are back in person, virtually, or a mix of the two, it will create all the things that we need so that people can be their natural self and play and reap all the benefits. And it's an acronym. It is PLAY. And the first one is psychological safety.
Wow. So you made that one first for a reason.
The reason is if people don't feel safe, they're not going to want to play. If you do not create an environment where people can bring their full authentic self, where people aren't afraid of being judged, where people don't think that, oh, if I make this mistake, oh, I'm going to lose my job. If you can create that, then people can thaw out. People will naturally want to be playful. So that's the first one. It's very important to do that. The L is listening. As leaders, we don't need to just like listen. We need to listen to understand. When you listen to understand, you will start to understand, oh, this is where people are coming from. Think about any game that you played. When you're listening in the game, you are understanding what's going on in that space so that you can do the next thing, the A, adapt. Adaptability is crucial to play. No matter how you're playing, there are going to be some uncertain elements and you have to adjust. This is the same for, any sort of board game, a video game, on the golf course, and in business. And then, of course, the why, and this is bringing the improv part in, yes and. How can you accept the reality and build on it? And I like to say build on it in a positive way. So that is my play framework. By adding those elements, you create what I call a sandbox. And when you have the sandbox, you can play.
I love sandboxes, and I used to play in them all the time as a girl. And, you're bringing up something very interesting. I'm going to be doing some work next year with a client, a very fast growing company, just about to hit 100 million in revenues. And I asked them, they're asking us to come in and lead a series of strategy meetings to help their marketing leader really align her teams around their growth strategy for 2022. And I'm used to hearing people say, well, I need you to get in here because we have a $10 million revenue shortfall, or we have a very high attrition rate of our best people and we need to close the gap because part of my bonus is tied to these things, right? None of those issues came up. The main issue and the main reason that the client wanted to hire us is because she said, you know how to bring out the best in people so that they feel heard. And that was for me this week. A lot of good things happened to me this week, Gary. But I have to tell you, that was probably one of the biggest highlights of the week, was for someone to say, you can help my people feel heard. I was like, wow, that's great. I think I'll take a few days off next week.
Winning.
Yes, winning. We love that. So I want to remind people too, we have Heather here today who is back for, I know. Hey, Heather. Reminding everybody who's watching us today that there are a couple things. First of all, we never want you to miss our 2022 show lineup. So make sure that you sign up for our Know Ahead list. And my wonderful producer will put the link in there at the bottom. And reminding you too that we'll take your live questions. So feel free to put those in the chat today. I would love to hear from our audience too, Gary. What are you doing in 2022 to be more playful? So feel free to put your comments in the chat. We'd love to see what you're doing in that regard. Maybe we can steal some of their ideas, Gary.
I agree. I'm all about adding to my playlist of
Oh, the playlist. All right. Now, Gary, I also hear from people, it's a lot harder now to separate your personal time or your personal life from your work life. And we're working on the kitchen table, the children are crying. And you have a son. So don't we need to keep some kind of wall between the work life and the personal life so that we can kind of protect ourselves and keep some modicum of privacy?
So you bring up a good point. And I hear that a lot of, you know what, I wish I can separate that. But let's be honest with ourselves. Is it even possible to say, hey, I'm going into work. I'm going to shut off everything that is going on at home. Oh, I'm going home. I'm going to shut off everything that is going on at work. And be very single task. That now what people are hoping that they have is proper boundaries so that they can be present in those spaces, so that when I'm at home, I could be present at home with my family, present and be in the moment with all the things that's going on. And then when I'm at work, I can be present. But we're humans. We're messy. We are not automatons. We're not robots. So it's not physically possible to turn those things off. It is possible to set up environments that allow us the ability to focus, to be present. Now, before, we talked about this, I saw a meme this morning that said, when I'm at home, I'm going to worry about work. And then when I'm at work, I'm going to worry about being at home so I can be 100% worried all the time. And I feel like that is like the sentiment that so many people are having right now just because of all that is going on. And I see you, I feel you.
Right. So it makes it very challenging for sure. Are there any ways that people can maintain privacy yet cultivate psychological safety? Help us unpack that, Gary.
Yes. And so before I even talk about that, I want to set up the case why this is important. There's research that states that if you want a team that thrives, if you want a team that supports each other, if you want a team that is resilient, that stays there, that doesn't just bail when things get rough, they need to feel comfortable. And one of the ways to create that bonding is if they have friends at work. I know the old sort of adage is like, no, I separate all these two. I have home life and I have work life, and these two, separate. However, think of it like this. When you know, like, and trust someone, you are going to work so hard for them because you don't want to disappoint someone that is in your squad, that's in your posse. And the research shows that when you have a work BFF, you are going to feel more sort of tied to the work. You are going to experience stress less. You're going to get over it faster. Now, that doesn't mean that you need to disclose everything. However, you do need to disclose something. There needs to be sort of back and forth where both sides, someone is, disclosing something, being vulnerable, so that you can start those bonds. Now, what you disclose is up to you. Brene Brown talks about this too, of oversharing. Like, yes, we
Yeah.
talk about being vulnerable, and vulnerable, is a path to strength, but it doesn't mean that every single thing that is going wrong or whatever you're just like oversharing. You need to have this level of like understanding. All right, where are we at? What is
Well,
appropriate?
I have to tell you, Gary, there's one person I've worked with who has a Facebook page, and they have been posting photos of themselves on the operating room table and, wearing their medical gown and things like that. And I'm thinking, I can't unsee that. I mean, that's just, I mean, when we say vulnerable, we don't mean, bring us into the operating room when you're burying your child, okay, or getting surgery, or we're not saying to get like down in the weeds here, people, but to be at least open the kimono to some degree about what's happening. I'll give you all an example. I'm not saying it's a great example, but Gary, you remember when we started the show today, and you and Marissa and I were chatting about getting prepared, and I said I was a little scared before I got on here, because right before that we were supposed to do our audio visual check, I started hearing a persistent beep, 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 really loud upstairs, and I thought it was the smoke alarm, but it wasn't. And it was my carbon monoxide detector. And it was so loud that my poor cat was hiding under the bed. Now, that's showing you a little vulnerability, right?
Yes.
That when things aren't going so well before my live stream, I get scared. I get nervous, and I want you to have a great experience. And I want all of our wonderful viewers and listeners to have a great experience. So I tend to err on the side of perfection, and sometimes it's very costly.
Yep. No, agreed.
So anyway, that
to
was
that point,
my example.
yeah, that is it. And what, just the little things of like, hey, you know what? I'm not at my best today because there's some stuff going on at home. I just wanted to let you all know that. And that way you're not essentially what we have been conditioned to do, mask. There's some rough things going on, and we're just like, everything's fine. You're not going to be the best version of yourself.
No, it's not fine. It absolutely. By the way, I want to bring up a couple of people real short here. Heather has some really good ideas for us about how she wants to be more playful in 2022. She wants to take some creative professional development classes, singing, dancing, acting, printmaking, photography. Heather, how are you going to have time for work? I mean, these are all phenomenal examples. So I say yes to all the above. And I'm going to throw one on there for you, Heather. I am a big fan of improv dance. So if you don't follow Ann Kite, she is a 5 rhythms dance teacher out of Virginia, and she has followers and dancers from all over the world that join us on Friday nights and virtually. So check out Ann Kite's dance classes. Oh, guess who else is here, Gary? Rhett Power is in the house. Hey, Rhett. Oh my gosh. Rhett has been traveling all over the world lately. Rhett, what country? I want to see in the chat, Rhett, what country are you in right now? This man is a guy on the go and a terrific fellow author and member of the 100 Coaches community. Yes, so Heather already knows about the 5 rhythms. Okay, great. Well, maybe Heather and I need to do some virtual 5 rhythms dancing together. I love it. Yeah, dance is great. By the way, Gary, another fun fact about Lisa, all of you guys are used to me talking about marketing strategy and customer centric strategies and publishing my books and CMO challenges. I know, look, it's like I'm all in my head most of the time. But I do want you to know that I really am spending a lot of time playing over the holidays. And one of the things that I love about my boyfriend, Michael, is he doesn't feel embarrassed when we're walking through the grocery store, which we love to do. And you know, that music that's piped into the grocery stores. And well, we were at a health food store and they started playing some really great music. So I just started like doing the slide down the aisles and he just broke out. And so yes, I'm one of those nerds that does. I am not embarrassed whatsoever to dance in the middle of a grocery store. So I've been busted. So
good.
Gary, Gary, talk to us a little bit about I want to hear about a corporate client you've worked with, and you can change the names to protect the innocent if you wish, where you saw a real transformation from serious, heady to some group that used the play model with great results.
Yes. So this group, they work in investments and finance. Matter of fact, their clients are high net worth individuals, and they do asset management. And I got brought in at first to do just like a team building thing. And that's usually how people get to know me. Is like, hey, it's our quarterly offsite, and we want to spice things up. So they brought me in. I did. The first time I did it, it was in person. It was right before the pandemic, and we brought in these activities, and they were very like sort of okay, improv, okay, and they were.
Is there a book about that? Yeah,
right, yeah, and they were expecting this sort of lecture thing, and taking notes, and I said no, we're going to actually start to do some activities, and they were a little resistant at first, but the thing with play is you have to be invited in. I know with some team building things, people are sort of like forced in, but the way that I addressed all of these things is inviting people to join me in these activities. And we started slow. We did one, an activity that was like on some movement, and they were mirroring each other. And then we start to do some things that are a little bit more challenging, where they're actually getting up in front of people and having conversations, and they're doing some things where they're a bit wacky. And all the while, and this is how the brain works, the brain is always making connections. And the way that I set up the experiences that I do is I want to have a debrief where people can reflect on what they just experienced and how can they tie that back into their day to day. And they started to like popcorn popping all over the place. I was like, oh my gosh, I do this with my clients. Oh, I need to listen better here. They started having all these sort of tie-ins. And then they also realized they were having fun, and it's okay. And they were realizing that they were learning more. And before they knew it, 2.5 hours were over like that. And they were like, we're done? And it's like, yeah, we're done. But the main thing is like, yes, we're done, but we just begun. Because I said, all of these ahas, all of these things that you want to apply, you need to do something with them. And so my invite to them is, how can you start to quote unquote play with it little by little so that you can, start to, be that change you want to see in the world. And so that was the catalyst. But then they realized that, oh, now we need to work on more authentic communication. So then we started really getting into the work, and we have very specific topics that they wanted to explore. And I brought activities to do that. But at first they were all like, I don't know what this is. They were very resistant. But that's the thing with play, is that when it's done right, people want to do it.
So you have some methods and techniques to kind of invite people into it versus just saying, all right, everybody, we're going to go, full Monty on this. You have some gradual ways of introducing people into the mind space of play,
Yes.
because
Creating
that's
that
one of the
sandbox.
creating that sandbox. And you talk, I don't want to get all heady here again. I will mention, however, that one of the reasons I keep bringing you back to speak to my CMOs and to join us in the live streams is because you continually find data that supports how the brain works and why play is such an important and much missed component of engaging your work teams today. And that's one of the things I really appreciate about you.
My pleasure. But yes,
I really
sometimes
do.
you need that data just to get people to be like, oh, okay.
That's
All right.
right. Do you
Yes.
know how many studies they have done now, neuroscience studies on mindfulness? They've well over 10,000. So I think that was the tipping point, is for all the, I started meditating and understanding the power of play 22 years ago. And 22 years ago, people thought mindfulness was for the hippies.
Right.
Mindfulness was for those people living out in the mountains in Santa Cruz, California. And, I don't understand it. And I'm just going to go back and, do other things or self-medicate. And now mindfulness has taken on mainstream support and had dramatic impact on the well-being of our country, of our world. So, I love that you understand that we have to tell our stories through play as well as draw from science. So it's really great. Gary, take us on home. Give us a couple of key strategies as marketing leaders that we can put into place to create that sandbox in 2022.
Yes. So the main thing that I want to leave you with, you're watching this and you're like, all right, I hear you. I see you. I need to play more. I need to activate my team more because I want them to be their best, do their best. Start small. Identify what are those inflection points, before big meetings or throughout the day that could use a little bit more playfulness. And what can you do to, spice things up? And I have adapted something that I learned from BJ Fogg, who wrote the book Tiny Habits, and it's a recipe. And it goes like this: after blank or before blank, I will blank because it will make me feel blank. So, for example, if your goal is to be able to be innovative, because you have to go into a big meeting where you need to be, a strategy session, before we get into our brainstorming session, I will take 5 minutes and brainstorm random ideas because I know it will prime my brain to be more expansive and creative. These recipes, which are important, is that it has a very specific prompt that triggers your brain into action. It tells you what the action is. It's almost like the program. If then do this. And then the other thing is, why is this important? And then after you do that, make sure that you celebrate it.
Celebrate. Yes.
Because then it will remind your brain that this was a good thing and you will be more likely to do it again. So that I just want to leave you with that. Something
Thank
simple,
you.
something actionable, and it will get you feeling the effects of being playful.
I love that, Gary. And how can people stay in touch with you and reach out when they're ready to play in the sandbox?
Yes. You can go to my website, breakthroughplay.com. That's where I have various recordings, and I have resources that can help you really activate your play drive. If you happen to be seeing this on LinkedIn, I'm here as well. So add me on LinkedIn.
Yes.
Love to continue the conversation.
Great. Well, we're so thrilled you were here. Thank you for helping us move from the sandbox into success for 2022, Gary. You are the best, and we will see you again next year. Stay healthy and happy holidays. Well, this is the time that we look at our mindful moments. So let me share with you some of the things that I heard today from our wonderful guest, Gary. The first takeaway I have now, see, I'm learning what Gary taught. I am coachable. See, this is what I want you all to notice. Okay. So Gary gave us some great strategies and I listened. So I'm part of the Play Sandbox. I listened and I heard this. Number one, you have to have strategies to invite people in, to create the conditions for play to happen. And Gary outlined the acronym PLAY just beautifully. So what can you do to warm up your teams, to warm up the room, so to speak, to give people the comfort and the psychological safety to share and to play, which in itself is a form of vulnerability. The second thing that I loved is he took some of the strategies of BJ Fogg, who wrote a book about tiny habits, and also James Clear, who was drafting off of those concepts as well and was most successful doing it. He said, make sure you have a framework and write down your intentions using that BJ Fogg framework before a meeting so that you're, again, cultivating the conditions for play to happen. I'll throw in another takeaway that actually I've used with my clients and I hope it's helpful for you as well, which is come up with some games. Come up with some simple games that can be that 5 minutes of doing 2 truths and a lie. Have some icebreakers. And you can search online for icebreakers. There are so many that I've used, and I'm sure there are several books available for you to try those out, whether you're meeting in person or you're meeting behind a screen. They can be incredibly powerful. And if you want some additional ones, drop me an email to lisa@lisanorell.com, and I'll be happy to share my favorites. So until then, my friends, this was the last show of the year. I want to wish all of you a healthy, joyful holiday season. Stay mindful and get out and play in the sandbox.